Bidenflation continues to spiral completely out of control, and his administration either can't or won't do anything about it. Compared to last January, prices are 7.5% higher. Now, I don't know about you, but I certainly am not getting a 7.5% raise this year, which means that my real income has decreased by quite a bit, and it probably has for you too. This is the worst inflation has been in 40 years. Now, a lot of people, including the Washington Post, will try to just blame COVID and say the reason we're doing this is because of COVID. So they say that inflation was expected to climb relative to last January when the economy reeled from a winter coronavirus surge with no widespread vaccines. So, according to them, it's expected to have higher inflation this year compared to last year. And sure, to an extent, that is true. But 7.5%? You can't just try to blame that on COVID. That's not how it works. But that's what politicians are doing in a lot of areas right now. If something goes poorly, like a job report or inflation, they blame COVID. If it goes well, even if they had nothing to do with it, they try and take responsibility. And Joe Biden, he does a great job doing this. Let me give you one really quick example. Do you remember, shortly after Biden took office, he was bragging about his 1 million vaccines a day. And he accomplished it, and then more, and he tried to take credit for this, saying he did a great job. This is his exact quote. He said, "We're now at a point where we've seen the average daily number of people vaccinated nearly double from the week before I took office." The problem is, this isn't true. Factcheck.org points out that actually, when Biden said that, the average daily number of people vaccinated had increased, sure, but only by 31%. They had not, quote, nearly doubled. Now, back to the inflation numbers. Again, they're not great. So we are here in 2022, which I still can't really believe we're in 2022 already. What happened to 2021? But we're at 7.5%, which is really high. Now, looking at this, there certainly are years where it was quite a bit higher. Back in, for example, 1980, it got as high as 14%. But if we have to go back 40 years to find an inflation rate that was higher than we had today, that means your economy is not going well. Sure, you can point to the 1970s and say inflation was worse back then, but how exactly does that help people today when the price of food and gas and electricity and virtually everything increases? For me, for example, we just found out that our gas bill is going to increase by 30%, which we got told out of the blue from one week to the next, bam, we're paying 30% more. And that's just one thing. The gas that goes into your car has increased quite a bit as well, and food, virtually everything has. So that's why inflation is a real issue. Sure, you can try to spend your way out of this, give people more and more money, which Biden tried to do last year with his Build Back Better and the rescue plan, I think he called it the first one. But I would venture that the vast amount of spending that Biden has effectively wasted is one of the key reasons that inflation is as high as it is now. When you look, inflation didn't start increasing really until March and April and May. And I'm pretty sure back in March, that's when Biden passed his first spending bill. So this inflation can be at least partially or largely tied to Joe Biden spending where he doesn't need to spend it. Now, the Washington Post says a little bit later that the White House has been touting its actions to lower prices, including targeting corporate consolidation to help create product markets that are more competitive. But since prices are still rising at a record high rate, the White House is obviously failing. There is no way you can look at the economy as it currently is and say that the White House is doing a good job, because they simply aren't. Now, Joe Biden and the White House, they will try to pretend that this inflation isn't a big deal, or they'll ignore it and hope we forget about it. And occasionally, they'll even lie and say that there is no inflation and you're actually saving money in the long run, which doesn't make any sense, but they already did that with this tweet. You remember that for 4th of July, the White House put out this tweet saying that the cost of a barbecue is now lower than it was a year prior. Now, the reason this is relevant is because that's clearly not the case. Just looking at this graph, I can't find July, but here's June, it was up 5% this June compared to the previous June. So not only were things more expensive, but gas, I remember that was the summer when gas was significantly over $3 a gallon, gas was way more expensive. So he's trying to nitpick and say maybe this one very specific small item is cheaper. And yay, good for us, we did it. But at the same time, inflation was already then at almost a 40-year high. So what are we celebrating exactly, Joe Biden? I don't think there's anything. It just goes to show you how out of touch he actually is. People who care about inflation are the ones who it's going to affect the most. Now, unfortunately, it doesn't really look like things are improving quite yet. Hopefully, we don't get worse than a 40-year high in inflation. But if Joe Biden has his way, we most certainly will. As always, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.